Council of the City of Nassau Bay, Texas, to be held on Monday, January 24th, 2022, at 6 p.m. in the Council Chamber, City Hall, 1800 Space Park Drive, Suite 200, Nassau Bay, Texas. The mayor will be here shortly. He's delayed a little bit, so we're going to start that out. First item on the agenda is roll call. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Six. The mayor will be here shortly. First item on the agenda is the citizen request for public hearing before the City Council. Privilege of speaking at this time is limited for the following persons: resident persons, person having ownership, interest in property, or a business located within the city, or their attorneys. A statement of no more than 3 minutes may be made on items of general relevance. There will be no yielding of time to another person. State law prohibits the mayor and members of council from commenting on any statement or engaging in dialogue without an appropriate agenda item being posted. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Law, comments should be directed to the entire council, not to individuals. Engaging in verbal attacks or comments intended to insult, abuse, malign, or slander any individual shall be cause for termination of time privileges and removal from the council chambers. Anyone wishing to speak, please approach the podium, give us your name and address, and tell us when you mind. Here you go. Time, by all means, 6:05 on that one.
Roscoe Lee, 1631 Lane. It's not on.
Okay, there it goes. Sorry. Roscoe Lee, 1631 Antigua Lane. My understanding is Mark Denman arranged a meeting between Jason Reynolds and Councilman Johnson. And as a result of that meeting, there was agreement to release the separation agreement, which is a great step forward in transparency. As a result of that agreement, the city also retracted their brief to the Texas Attorney General, which was blocking Freedom of Information Act requests for copies of the separation agreement. As a result, Brian Brown got a copy of that agreement and passed it on to me. I reviewed it, and it's interesting. There is some information in there about the cost associated with the separation of Jason. Unfortunately, it's not complete, and I feel that the city should provide a complete financial report, which would include all payments made to Jason, payments made to Greg and Greg for processing the separation, payments to Greg and Greg for processing these briefs to the Attorney General to block Freedom of Information Act requests. And also, of course, there's the cost of recruiting a new city manager. Those would be ongoing costs, but at least the first cut at it. And I also understand that there is some work that Jason was heavily involved with, such as the home elevation, which may be contracted out. If that is so, then those costs should be added. Now, none of those costs are budgeted from my understanding, and as a consequence, I think the report also should identify what is the source for paying for those costs. Is it from our reserve funds? I know council really wants to keep the reserve funds intact. Or are there projects that have been funded which are now canceled or delayed? I think it's important for all residents to understand how much it's costing us for this decision and what are the functional impacts to the city's operations. I also would like to understand who in the city is reviewing the request for Freedom of Information Act data. I've made a request for the email among correspondence from the mayor and council related to Jason from the 25th of October through the 3rd of December. I received a letter from Greg and Greg stating that the city was providing some of that data, but they objected to some of it and had filed a brief with the Texas Attorney General. And okay. Anyway, I don't think the rationale was attorney-client privilege and private information. I don't think the process for firing Jason is private. It affects all of us and it's public. And I would hope that continuing the line of transparency that you release this information as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Roscoe. Anyone else?
Cato, 18579 Martinique Drive. I'm coming here as the president of the Garden Club to do two things. Invite you to attend our next Garden Club meeting, which will be February 8th, right here in the council chambers. And the other thing I want to get on your minds is Beautification Day. This is a day that we go and plant bedding plants in all of our gardens and try to beautify the area. And that will be on March 26th, Saturday, March 26th. So I want to get that date in your minds now so that you can be thinking about signing up for that. You'll be able to sign up for it on the city's volunteer website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want me to wait for the mayor to sit? Might take him a while. My name is Bob Wilkinson, 18231 Nassau Bay Drive. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I talk to you tonight as a private citizen, not as a member of the Parks Committee. This is Bob Wilkinson speaking. So, now that Kid Course 1800 has been approved and is already ordered, I ask the council to please consider the location in David Braun Park. This location, next to the basketball court, is going to be a very, very tight fit. I took my tape measure out there and measured how big the course is and where the fit is, and we have approximately 7 to 10 feet border on either side, which means we're going to be very, very close to the trees. I don't want to bring anybody's name up, but they also measured it, and we all agree that it's going to be a very, very tight fit. So what I'm saying is we ought to move it somewhere else in the park if that's where council wants it. Okay? We're going to be very close to the basketball court. And I don't want my 10-year-old grandson hearing all the swearing words coming from the basketball court, which we all know happens when you got teenagers playing basketball. You're going to be literally 10 feet from the basketball court. That's all I'm asking tonight. Please let the Parks Committee look at it, or y'all look at it, or take another survey, or do something. But don't put it right there when you pull in. Now, we pull in, we park, we have a nice green space, we have our basketball court, and you walk down a nice walkway to get to it. We're gonna screw it up by putting that big course right there. The course is ordered, that's fine, no questions asked there. Let's just move it on the other side of the building. Do something else with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Sarah Plunk, 18639 Prince William Lane. I'm grateful to see that you guys are discussing taking action on the live streaming this evening. I know that the last time it kind of came up, several of you talked about forming like a committee to see the best ways that we could do this and move forward with that. And I think that that's great. I think that committees are great when their expertise and time and recommendations are taken into consideration. But I, also request that we remember that perfection is the enemy of progress. And so in the meantime, while we're working on the best way to do it, I would like you guys to consider go ahead and sharing the videos that we're already taking, just to get that information out as soon as possible. Thank you.
Does anyone else care to speak?
I have some comments.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Brian Brown, 1454 Davon Lane. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I would like to start off by expressing my gratitude in allowing access to the citizens' request for public hearing through written letters. I know for many of our residents, this has been an excellent way to communicate with the city during the pandemic, and for those who have otherwise can't attend meetings due to other obligations. Tonight, this council will begin what should be an in-depth analysis of our needs and capabilities in terms of live streaming and broadcasting city council and board meetings to the citizens of Nassau Bay. The workshop agenda item is a direct result of months of discussion and citizen engagement that culminated in a petition that saw 117 residents of our city sign on. 117 residents that felt it was important enough to speak up and say that they want these meetings broadcasted. I would like to thank everyone involved in getting this from concept to point, and again, I would like to thank Carol and Sarah for broadcasting these meetings over social media to help keep the citizens informed. In the 2 weeks since the regular meeting on January 10th, the Facebook Live video has been viewed 294 times, with a high of 22 people logging in from home to watch during the actual meeting. The meeting was also posted to YouTube the following morning and has been viewed 260 times as of this writing. This shows that people are becoming more aware of these recordings and broadcasts, and I am a firm believer that these numbers will continue to grow once the city assumes broadcasting through council's chosen mediums. Thank you for taking the time and making the effort getting the live streaming and broadcasting on the agenda and workshop tonight. Laura Ford, 1911 Back Bay Court. Dear Mayor Waters and Council, I understand that planning for our parks is on tonight's agenda. Early during the pandemic, Council approved restoring one baseball field. Many families were hopeful that we would have a practice baseball field in our neighborhood last summer due to a shortage in practice fields. With another season starting next month, would you kindly provide an update on the ETA for restoring the baseball field? In addition to baseball, our Naughty Cats use the field for weekly kickball games, and the rusted and sharp fences are a safety hazard. Sincerely, Laura Ford. Catherine Hathaway, 18647 Cape Charles Lane. Mayor and council members, contrary to the position some council members have expressed in the past, the citizens of Nassau Bay do have a strong and sustained interest in following our city's council meetings. It is an opportunity to showcase our beloved community, and undermining any efforts to allow more of our neighbors to be informed and participate in our city's affairs is not in the best interest of Nassau Bay. I can understand restricting the number of citizen letters to be read in the open session. You attempted to shut down such citizen input entirely, which is flat wrong. We can all understand limiting the numbers to a reasonable number, example, total of 5 representing 15 minutes. Why was that not your preferred course of action?
Is there anyone else that, who cares to speak? If not, we'll move on to the council members' time to speak. We'll talk with Sandy. Thank you.
I'm happy to start, just don't forget Matt. Pryor.
Matt's online.
Matt's online.
Oh, Matt, I didn't see you online. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the 117 residents that provided their support of broadcasting the council meetings and workshops. I started to respond to everybody individually when I had a couple of those emails come in, and then it just became to a pace that I couldn't keep up with. So my apologies for anyone that I wasn't able to got those emails, and certainly appreciate the interest in what's happening with the city. Nothing else from me, Mayor.
Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. Matt actually stole my thunder as well. I did exactly what he
That's the
did.
beauty of being in position 6, Sandy.
I should have done it first. Anyway, I actually very much appreciated the input from the citizens, and I too gave up after a while of responding. It almost got to be like, oh my gosh, here come 5 more or 10 more at a time, and that was great to see the interest. Appreciate that very much. I also want to thank Kristen Edwards for the comprehensive communications plan. It is very extensive, very well done. I already mentioned I thoroughly enjoyed looking at the household characteristics of those residents of Nassau Bay, and I hope you all take the time to look at that data too. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, Bryce.
January, everyone. I also want to thank the community outreach for the broadcasting of Nassau Bay meetings. I think it's great that, there's been citizens that have been recording here for, I think, the past 4 or 5 meetings. And my position is I really want this in the hands of volunteers. It's going to be on the agenda item. And if the city is involved in filming, and you'll hear more about this when it comes on the agenda, I would like it to be on the City of Nassau Bay's website as opposed to a third-party provider like YouTube, owned by Google, etc. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Ashley?
Thank you, Mayor. I will echo Matt's comments and Sandy's as well regarding the overwhelming outpour about about live streaming, and I want to thank everybody who's taken it upon themselves to make sure that that's an option for people out there. And I think you'll be very pleased with what we have on the agenda tonight, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail here soon. I also want to take a minute to thank our volunteers. Raise your hand if you are in this room right now and you volunteered some way, shape, or form for Nassau Bay. Yeah, so we are volunteers. I think if between the volunteer fire department and the garden club that predates the city and the planning commission and the parks department, Parks Committee, if all of our volunteers, special events, if these things ceased, we would not be the Nassau Bay that we know and love today. So I just want to thank you for doing what you do, for being willing to volunteer. If you haven't volunteered in some way, shape, or form, you can go online and fill out a volunteer application, so to speak. And if you're looking for a place to do it, just let me know. We can probably put you in the right place. But I want to take a minute to just thank the volunteer fire department that saves us potentially millions of dollars a year, the garden club and parks that beautify our city. And I really think that if we had to do this in our budget, we just simply wouldn't be the city we are today. So thank you for all your efforts.
Phil?
Yeah, I'd like to make just really one comment, and I'm very glad that the social media topic is on. I thank you for bringing it up because I really think you started it. There's 2 people I'd like to call out, which is Sarah and Brian Brown, because when this initial discussion started, it almost was a combative type of discussion. And I appreciate the dialogue that we've had and the dialogue with Brian that looked at saying, hey, we have all shared concerns and there's a good reason for what we're going to do. So I appreciate that, and it shows that when people kind of move off of just the social media, Facebook type, responses and actually talk to one another, beautiful things can happen. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Don?
I can tell you honestly, if I got 5 emails a year when I was mayor years ago, it was an unusual day for a year. When these started pouring in, it was a key indicator where things are going to go. And it has to come from you folks. I can tell you, I got very few phone calls, emails. And usually you say one email is worth about 45 people behind that. I've been in the environmental business, and I cut your losses when you start seeing things coming at you in masses. All politicians do. And I think it's very incumbent upon you, the citizens, making your thoughts known. And I appreciate that. My first objection to live streaming was every city that went that way years ago told us, don't ever go that way. It was the beginning of the end. I don't think that's what happened here in Nassau Bay, because people realize it's a necessary thing. We didn't have social media years ago. So I appreciate all the input. I was going to start doing a mass mailing back. I hit 127, I said, that's it, I'm not going to do it. But I do thank you folks for taking the time to do it. And you have to keep us informed. all of us up here probably dig into one separate area of the city. I'm below ground in the flood area, sewer and water lines. We get specialized. We don't get the big picture of everything. So I thank you for that. And we'll discuss this shortly. That's all I have.
Thank you, Don. I also received 120 some odd identical emails thanks to Roscoe's mass mailing program, and it was wonderful. There was no difference except for the name and the email address on it, but nevertheless I appreciated it. I'd like to briefly say where we are in the research for a new city manager. We have hired SGR, which is very much a premium research for personnel for cities such as us. Have done a number of researches in this area for other cities in this area and other cities throughout the country. We have them now under contract. They have interviewed each of the city council persons to see what each of the people are really looking for in a city manager. And so far I'm very impressed. And that's all I have to say today. Our next item is new business, and we'll consider and take action, possible action on the live and on-demand broadcast of city council meetings on the city's social media channels and or rebroadcast on Nassau Bay's public access channel 16 and any other media avenues deemed appropriate. Thank you. Ashley, you're going to speak on this subject.
Yeah, I just want to speak a little bit here on this, and I want to thank all the citizens that have really taken the time to bring this to the forefront, and I want to thank council for their responses to this as well, because I do think that this is important, and it's an important time to make this happen for our city. I asked Tim to have staff look into a couple different options for us as far as live streaming the meetings on social media, making sure that the meetings are filmed and available on the website. So those of us who don't feel comfortable with social media don't have to go there, and you still have the benefits of this. Additionally, we looked into some other options, and I think Tom will speak on that in just a minute. What I like about what we discovered most is that we do have an option right now to move forward with what we've been doing in the past, both on social media and the website, for those who would prefer the website, free of charge moving forward at this moment. And then we are going to be able to put together a different sort of plan of action to get something implemented that I think would be very useful for all of us. And I'll let Tom talk about this before I get ahead of myself here, because I think what he's going to show you will be very impressive, and you'll enjoy it.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. So, about 2 weeks ago, this conversation came up that we got to talking, and there was a few of us within staff, and so I did some research. I did look around. The closest city that does this on a regular basis is League City. I know the IT director over there, Ryan Smith. I called him and talked to him after I went to their website and looked at how they were doing it. He gave me the name of the company and a contact person. I contacted them last week, sat in on a webinar, learned a lot about what they offer. That name of that company is Swagit. I think some of their info, the actual quote that I got back was included in your packets. They have a very good system. It'll do a lot of different things. It will stream on social media. It will stream to the city's website. There's a lot of different tiers of service that they provide. So if you want to stream it live on social media, that's one option. If you want to have it captioned, you can do that. One of the nice things they do, if you select, is they create a transcript, and like, I think she's got Galveston, the City of Galveston's page is pulled up right now, so it can stream the meeting live, but it also will keep all those recordings in a library on the site. So you can go there anytime, click on it. If you pick the transcript setting option, you can actually go to the transcript and go down to an agenda item, select that agenda item, and it'll pull it right out. You can get real into it by keyword search. If you were to search for the example I used this morning was Christmas tree, you'll actually go through the transcript and find that word Christmas tree and pull up the video that corresponds with whoever said it. So there's a lot of really nice stuff that this particular service provides. Based on the cost for equipment was in the $50,000 range. You buy the equipment. Because of that high cost, we're going to have to go out for bids on this. We'll at least have to get 3 bids. So this might not be the end result we would be looking at. So as far as the funding for that, we can use Comcast money for equipment. This is all from Chile. So if I say something wrong, let me know. But for the equipment, but as far as services go, that's going to have to come out of a general fund or somewhere else. Can't use that money for services. This particular system is all run remotely by their technicians. No one has to sit in the room and handle cameras or audio or anything like that. It's all done by them. They do it for numerous cities, just in Conroe, Katy, Irving, Abilene, Galveston. I mean, I got a whole list. So this is not some fly-by-night little operation. So it is a little expensive, but I think for the product that you would get out of it would be, I think it's perfect for what we're looking for. So I have said in the past, I don't think this is a job that should be put on staff, because it's not like putting up a camera and just sitting there. You know, you're gonna, this particular format is gonna get you zoom in on people. It's a 4-camera system. It's all HD. They do all the recording, do all the transcripts. For open records, that is going to alleviate all that, because they can go right to the website and get it. And you can ask Sandra, she'd probably love that. There are some really good options on this. Mr. Johnson, I think you brought up Gloria Day. So I contacted them. I talked to Mario, I forget his last name.
He's the IT guy.
Yep. So they did that system on their own. They brought in a company that recommended what they thought that the church would use, but Mario changed it to what he did. He said for one, he's got 2 different systems. The main system was over $100,000 just for the equipment. It's all run by him. It takes 4 people to run the show. He can do it with one, he said, but it's a lot of work, but he doesn't have much of a problem running it because he has a lot of teenage volunteers that do all the camera work. So that, while it is a really awesome...
Your audience is much bigger too.
Yes,
so.
And they've got a lot of volunteers, and it sounds like they're very energetic and want to stand, and be part of it. So I think putting that back, again, I mentioned before, putting that back on staff or someone on staff to do is going to be a lot. Let's just say you want it to be me. It can't really be me, because I sometimes have to participate in the meeting, and if this pager goes off, I gotta leave. So there's gotta be someone to stand there. So my recommendation would be to look at this service or something similar. And in order to do that, I think we'd have to go out for bids. In the meantime, and they've already spoke on this, I think we can go back to what we were doing before and at least get it streaming there on the Facebook platform. So.
The one thing, Gloria, I don't mean to interrupt, but the one thing Gloria Day said, I usually don't need this, but I'll do it anyway, is they made a conscious decision not to do Facebook because of security.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is, coming to what Sarah had mentioned earlier, but
I think being able to post it to the website is really cool. You don't need anything special. Now, like we were looking around today, and I think Tim went on and he found Galveston County, right? Was it Galveston County?
Galveston County, yes. They have pretty much the same setup. They're using a different company, and theirs would not play on my phone or when I go back to the office without an additional plug-in.
Yeah, see, we want to avoid that. We want to make it simple. Yeah. We don't want somebody to have to go get this and that and all this crazy stuff. So when we go out for bid, if that's the decision that's made by y'all, we'll write that into our specs, into our RFQs.
Do you know the equipment cost versus the service?
The equipment cost for that quote that I got was $54,000. The service cost ranged anywhere between 22 and 26 a year. What that gets you, that particular one that I selected, got you 25 meetings. That's 2 meetings a month plus an extra. And then it gave you the transcript option, it gave you the search option, and the streaming option. Those were, I think, the 3 options that were on that quote. So you have to, if you want to stream it on Facebook or YouTube, that's I think I forget what the actual breakdown and the charge was, but you pay for that monthly, so, as extra. And let's say, like I asked her that day, is what happens if we have a hurricane or some other event where we have to have other meetings more than the 25? All we have to do is call them ahead of time. They're 24/7. You don't get a recording. You get people. You say, hey, I need to set up a meeting for 7 o'clock tonight. They can do that. Of course, you got to pay for it. It's about $350 per extra meeting. That's on this service.
I have a question. The one that you researched, this is great information, very thorough, and it looks very reasonable, but you did mention that we'd have to go out for bid because of the cost. Are you aware of any other reasonably competitive companies out there?
Sheila did some research on that, and she sent me 3 companies. I did look at them today. While they do offer streaming services, I don't know if they offer all the exact features because I did not talk with a representative. I just went to their website and looked at it very briefly.
But they're similar in cost?
I didn't even get into the cost part of it.
Okay.
We haven't even researched
I know Gloria Day uses somebody different, but it doesn't have all these features. I don't know if it does or doesn't. I shouldn't say that.
They posted to a site, Vimeo, I think it is, Vimeo. Yeah,
I
that's
think you're going to find there's many people out here.
That company provides all their hosting, and that serves as their library for all their data. So all their videos are uploaded to that, and it's like a library. You go in there and pick and choose whatever you want to watch. I've been to that. I went to their site to check it out.
Bill, you had a question earlier about security?
No, I had a comment that Gloria Day specifically chose not to have their venue on Facebook because of security issues. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what I've heard.
And the service we're looking at is
just
just
my comment before.
It's just output, so it's not interactive. It's not like back when we did the Zoom thing and we got hacked and all that. No, this is just an output source. There's no interaction.
And that would be the same in the interim if we went to what we were doing prior to check with Sandra that we can push it out without having to have the interaction come back, so we would not be hacked again like we were in the one meeting. So we can do that internally to get the information out there. The quality would probably not be what this is, but in the interim, we would still have something.
This device that we're operating right here is what we use. Whereas you get a company to come in and do it, they're going to mount their cameras in the ceiling. It's not going to be wires all over the place. They'll tie into our audio system. There's about a 6 to 8 week turnaround if all products are in stock. You know how it is. That's what she told me.
So you mentioned that it costs more to stream on Facebook if you were to not just do Nassau Bay website, and then because once it's there, you can upload it to YouTube if that's the prerogative of the citizen. But is there a difference there between?
If you don't want to live stream it to the social media, yes, then you don't have to pay for that. Because they're going to create the recording. That recording is ours. We can do with it what we want. We want to provide a link somewhere on social media to point back to wherever this is stored. We can do that. And I could look up the exact cost. I want to say it's $300 a month.
Yeah, so $395.
$395 a month for that streaming, live streaming on social media.
So it says 3,600 versus 26,000.
That'd be off of the 20. Yeah, it'd be off of that 26. So you save 3,600 off of that.
Oh, I see. So you're still looking at.
You're still in the 20s on the service side. You figure about $375 to $400 per meeting, average somewhere in there.
Okay.
We're paying those little bit of extras for the different options, and we can go through that. I think there might be a way for a group of people when these decisions are all made. You guys can figure out what we want to do. committees or whatever.
Are there any options where you could have volunteers film and then you wouldn't have to pay that service? Is that?
This service can be run on site. There is a controller you can get, and you can run it on site, yes. And whoever you wanted to get to do that, that would be decisions for y'all.
I talked with Mario a little bit at Gloria Day. He said the reason why they have such operator involvement because as they like to move the cameras during the congregation to give it that truly live feel. And I don't see the value of that. I mean, to have that type of manual need is something that I think goes beyond just having a record and doing some of the things Sarah and Brian had talked about for live streaming. It can be just very fixed, and it doesn't matter.
I mean, from a budgeting perspective, the capital cost is great because that we already have a source of funding for that with Comcast that we cannot use for general fund type items. I kind of want an approach that would minimize the ad bill tax we have to pay. I don't know if 26 or in the 20s is reasonable or not. I'm feeling a little bit of sticker shock on the price.
Well,
if we could lower that, that'd be awesome.
My view is, and I agree with what Tom was saying, is maybe, and I think people were talking all out in the hallway 2 city councils ago, just getting a benchmark and getting a group of people together to knock it out, and that way we can really see. Yeah, I think that's what we should do.
Task force.
I know. I'm looking just as a small group of people. I know people, when we talked about it, had volunteers, so I'd like to see those people involved, but I'll follow your lead.
I was going to make a motion as to that effect, unless anybody has some other questions for Tom.
Make one more statement on that.
Sure.
So if we were to do that, if we were to run it on site, use our people, there's still going to be charges affiliated with the streaming and the backbone and the service, that kind of thing. I don't know how much it will reduce it, but it would reduce it.
That would probably put heads in beds, I would imagine.
That's all for you. That's all on you guys.
That's a no from Sheila.
If we were to do this in-house, would this be one dedicated person, camera person, with a person?
I would say it would definitely be one person because this system uses 4 cameras, the control.
We can't do anything for $24,000. We can't do this for $24,000.
In all seriousness, though, I mean, I'm wondering if we could reach out to Hilton / our hoteliers in the city and see if they would sponsor, city council meeting brought to you by Bayhab or something. I mean,
I still wouldn't want to be prescriptive here. I hear what you say, Tom, and I know other people, they turn a system on and they turn it off, and they really just don't try to manipulate it much.
Right.
And that would eliminate a lot of the, quote, labor, which is, I think, your concern, Tom. I believe there's some options that we need to vet out.
I'm not for or against, and it's not for me to say, but I will give you just some past history on trying to do video in the city because I've been involved in it. We've tried to do MVTV for years and years. And we get a person that might be interested, they last a week and it goes away. So unless you got a team of people that are like 110% committed to stand in here and do that, I'm just saying, that's based on what I've seen over the last 13 years.
I agree.
yeah, sure.
So I'd like to make a motion that we begin the live streaming back onto Facebook with the OWL and additionally onto the website starting the next council meeting. In addition to that, put together a task force to address a lot of the issues that have come up here, looking at the other options, possibly going out for bid on this, consisting of myself, council member Pryor, Tom, thank you for your help again, and Charles Pulliam has agreed to be on this as well. We can modify that if there's other volunteers that we feel would be a good fit for the task force, but moving forward, that would be the motion I'd like to put in place.
There were 2 other people that wanted to be involved, which was Brian Brown and David Pollerstock. They both had done some things. And I guess one of the things I would ask is, are you willing to, because this is where we were before, are you willing to not do Facebook and do something like YouTube? Because I think that's what, you know, David Brown and others had said, just to stay away from Facebook.
I think for now, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, Sandra, but the stream to Facebook is what gives us the link to be able to put it on the website, and then people have the option, correct?
So as you can see, we have, the meeting recording is being done on Zoom. And here is where I'm able to take this Zoom output, so the Zoom video itself is then pushed out to Facebook. So if you can see this little click. So I have that option to either do it to Facebook or do it to a custom live streaming service, which could include YouTube itself. Our subscription level, I could possibly do one or the other. With Facebook, this Zoom video that I output to Facebook, I can create an embed code to our website that has the video at the same time. I can live stream the video at the same time on our website. I know it sounds much more complicated than it is.
So it comes from the Zoom, goes to the Facebook, and then to the website.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's in a player, I think you said, Tom, on the website. So it's all happening simultaneously with one click. We can do to YouTube itself, and then the next day possibly put the meeting on our website. Okay.
This issue is too much for us to solve in this council meeting. And I would suggest that we appoint a committee. Somebody will make a motion, possibly with Phil Johnson and Ashley Graves.
Mayor, I did make a motion with a committee consisting of myself, Councilmember Pryor, Charles Pulliam, and Tom as well, to look at a couple of the options that we're going to get if we choose to go out for a bid on this and review that. Councilmember Johnson mentioned a couple of other people that would be interested. I'm not opposed to putting them as alternates if they'd like to join at some point, and we can add that to the motion. We just don't have a second yet on that.
Second. Tell me what the motion is, please.
The motion is that we start again with the live stream to Facebook beginning the next council meeting, which is free of charge, and that will additionally be on the website. So those that aren't comfortable with social media have that option. That's to begin the next council meeting, and then there will be a task force moving forward consisting of myself, Councilmember Pryor, Charles Pulliam, Tom, staff member, and alternates mentioned by Councilmember Johnson, which were David Holderstock and Brian Brown, yes.
I would just include.
Okay, we can amend the motion to include them.
Would you repeat one of the first things you said about Facebook? We're going to stream it on?
Yes, sir. Just basically continue what we did for the year during COVID that we've already been doing.
Well, there's a second, so we can vote for it.
Oh, just there's more discussion. And again, because I think this is important, and I don't want to be so prescriptive as that it could be Facebook or another appropriate streaming venue, because I think there's, you know, that doesn't stop it, but it gives the group the ability between now and then, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or whatever, because I think there's some concerns with Facebook, and rather than having it just be prescriptive, to open that up to give the committee the ability to look at what really fits.
Right, the motion for beginning again next council meeting was simply to put in place what we had for an entire year, which was what Sandra just showed us that she was doing with the click of a button. So that's free and very minimally staff invasive, and then allow the committee to decide how we're going to move forward from that. And we can cultivate from there. If we decide that we don't want to move forward with Facebook at all, we do have other options to go straight to the website, I'm sure. And that can be part of what's amended later as well.
So that, if I hear you correctly, that says we would have to amend it or it would stay as Facebook.
I think we can provide another motion at the next meeting if people aren't comfortable with Facebook. But for now, I just want to make sure that we're using zero funds to get back to where we were for a year during COVID, when we were putting this on Facebook and also putting it on the website. So those aren't comfortable with social media do have that option.
The only thing I would add is
I'd like to put a deadline. At some point, you make a decision, you go. And the same thing goes with Facebook. So,
A deadline for what exactly?
For the task force to come back.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
there's a beginning and there's an ending.
I would say by the March meeting, we ought to be able to have everything we need for council to make a vote.
I can do that.
You think we'll be able to have the quotes back from, like the RFP process?
Sheila?
It would be pretty close depending on advertising because we use HC and legals. There's a little bit of scheduling space that to even just get the quote out.
Gotcha.
But it's a target.
Is it more realistic to say the April council meeting, that the task force can come back with something by then?
Well, the task force is gonna create what you want, and then you're gonna create the RFP from that, right?
Wait, well, yeah, we'll have lots of work between now and then.
My hope is the benchmarking that started will cut a lot of this time frame, and we'll be able to do things pretty precisely with a, bid.
Why don't you just say no later than the April meeting, which means they obviously could come forward if the committee had their recommendation.
I think that's a great idea.
Just last point of inquiry for Sandra. There will be a link on the website to go to view it, and is the only viewing option Facebook?
I can provide counsel, during COVID when we were broadcasting on Facebook, you did not have to leave our website to view that video.
Okay, good.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that is. Yes.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion, or are we ready for the vote? All in favor of Ashley's motion, please raise your hand. I believe it's unanimous. We're for the second item on new business. Sandra, would you read the caption?
Discussion and update on the status of the modification of a previously executed separation agreement between former city manager Jason Reynolds and the City of Nassau Bay in order to remove the gag rule.
I think that's to me. Yeah, I've got a couple of things to report to here, and some of them it's gonna be, one that's not such great news. First though, Roscoe, I want to correct something. The meeting that you mentioned was something that Mark and I did back in the week of December 13th to kick it off, not to conclude it. So there's been no meeting in the recent past that concluded that caused the release of the separation agreement. And I'm sure Mark will verify that. But we've come to a really significant juncture in the effort for full transparency and open discourse regarding the separation of the former city manager. If you remember, I reported last time there are two sections to the separation agreement. Section 18, which restricted the publication of the separation agreement as a document. It keeps it confidential, private, which has been, that's the piece that I got some good news on. Section 11, which restricts any comments or discussions as to the reason for the separation, even if those comments are true, is called what we call the gag rule in that regard. It has been probably the most controversial portion of the agreement for those supporting transparency. Unfortunately, it's my understanding that as of now, the former city manager, while accepting the action for the physical release of the separation agreement, he's not agreeing to the elimination of the gag rule. For the record, the city has authorized 2 amendments to be created that protected Jason from any real or potential legal costs. One amendment removed section 11 and section 18. The other amendment was exactly the same, but removed only section 18. The former city manager signed and returned this past week without modification the amendment removing only the restriction of the public release of the agreement. That's section 18, but effectively maintains the gag rule. Without the city manager's permission, the gag rule, since this is a mutual agreement, stays in force. City council has voted twice, 6-1 and 7-0, to authorize the lifting of the gag rule. I think most of the people in this room support the lifting of the gag rule. I've had many people call me directly, encouraging me and wanting this effort to happen. And even citizens across the spectrum have spoken of the need for full transparency, and even coming to the podium to talk about town hall meetings and as such. Again, the gag rule restricts any of this from happening. To me personally, I think the continuing the gag rule should, the efforts to remove it should continue. I'm hoping that that with the discussion and the full information about where we are, that people will reconsider, and that gag rule will be released. But as of this time, it is the city manager which holds that card. Any questions?
Yes, so there is some information that council has readily available, so our inability to release it resides solely with the former city manager, if I understand that correctly.
For any of those items that are related directly to the separation, yes. That's my understanding. Council, you may. That's correct.
Even if the statements are true, we are not allowed to say truthful statements because of this section, correct?
Because of the contractual provision, yes.
That's unfortunate.
With the release of 18, and this is for you, Dick, are we able to talk about the process that unfolded with the separation of the city manager from the city? I guess I'm a little bit confused because I thought when this first was in the works, we were referring to 18, or section 18 as the gag rule, and then it got a little more developed from there, and now it's also including 11, which I thought was known as the disparagement clause. So I'm a little confused on what we can talk about with the separation agreement according to the release of 18 versus what we cannot with 11 still being in place.
Well, the release of the agreement is just the release of the agreement itself, and not any of the details of what brought the agreement to the forefront in the first place. So the background part is what would be covered by the second prong if we're going to do it.
So in other words, still city council cannot say anything.
Correct.
Say anything about anything regarding the separation.
They can't say anything that's disparaging to the city manager, and the city manager can't say anything disparaging about the council. That still stays in place, and that's even if those things are true.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've spent a lot of time here trying to find ways around this. It is any comments regarding the separation at all, including but not only disparaging comments, even if they're true.
Correct.
It's all comments.
Well, I guess that's my question. Is it all comments, like we can't say X, Y, and Z happened in this order and these steps were taken on this day to procure an agreement? I mean, can we not talk about it in that factual statement? Or are we only limited to speaking about?
At this point, you're allowed to release the agreement itself. You're not allowed to disparage and criticize the other side.
Okay, well, we can talk about the process and the steps.
Yes, but you gotta be careful.
Taken place.
Sure. About the process that took place, you can talk about. That's already been discussed a bit as to what was proposed and what's been signed. Okay. That's not controversial or disparaging.
Okay.
But be very careful not to disparage anybody about it.
Got it.
It is a contract. We are bound by it at this point, and nobody has to sign it. In order to modify it, both sides have to agree.
Okay. But talking about like this action happened on this day, this action happened on this day, this action happened on this day, that's allowed.
This action was with regard to the contract, but not the action that led up to the termination.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. I'm talking about the actual process of, when the separation agreement was created, that process in particular. And the facts just stating around the time it was done.
Well, I guess so. I mean,
without
things
disparaging.
are not about to make a big difference in this debate because it's the disparage, it's the elements to it that are being sought. And you can't disclose those elements at this point until we have a modification of the contract.
So
Do you agree?
11 would go into the reasoning for the actions taken.
Right.
18 is just facts stating how things happened in the process.
So it's the agreement itself.
Right, to the agreement.
Nothing more. It's just like somebody wants to see the agreement. It's no longer an agreement that cannot be produced and is confidential in nature because we contracted it to be confidential. It's now not. But all the elements that went into it are still confidential because they have this surviving clause. Council agreed to do both. It resulted in an agreement to do one.
Anything like a town hall meeting or anything around the full discourse, anything around those actions would not be allowed.
No, they would not, and it would be dangerous to do, and we shouldn't do it. And if we get an agreement to that effect, then fine, we talk about everything that happened.
Bob, I'll offer it. Sure, go ahead.
Yes. Is the city going to pay for Jason's legal fees? Then he would release everything.
We already created all the documents on the city, and he already signed it, signed one, so we did it particularly to protect it, so there's no legal cost, zero.
Okay.
These documents were created by our attorney?
Yeah, created there, they were set there, just a real background. All it is deleting sections. It's here. Jason signed the document without any modifications whatsoever for the release of 18, and just chose not to, and said he only wanted the agreement to be released. So it's created. I mean, it just needs to be signed, and we did that particularly because Jason, I guess 2 councils ago, 3 councils ago, actually asked me and said, hey, I don't want to be liable for any further legal costs, so we took that off. And it's a very simple thing. It's just deleting a paragraph. And he's, like I said, he signed the one that was there, and it's identical to the other one. So.
I do have one more question. If we were to release paragraph 11, how does that square with paragraph 3 regarding not a decision based on employment performance?
I don't think there's a conflict. Do you?
I don't either.
I don't think that's a conflict.
Okay.
So to put it succinctly, we just need one signature from one person to release this clause.
That's my understanding.
We've already signed it.
Yeah, so if the city manager does this, it's right.
Correct.
That hasn't been done.
Correct.
Okay.
The former city manager.
That's all I had.
Ready to move on? Our next item is the council workshop, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. I would like to say I'm sorry I'm late. In all the 12 years or so I've been on council, I've never been late and I've never missed a meeting. But I thought this meeting started at 6:30, and I left in plenty of time for that. But I apologize for that.
Is there a reason for going just south forth and not have a break?
Well, we have to wait till everybody leaves. It's not an executive.
No, it's just a workshop.
Okay. I thought we were going into executive session. We don't need an adjournment and intermission, so let's go on. Item A, please, Sandra.
Presentation and discussion on the City of Nassau Bay's communication plan a document which addresses internal, emergency, external, and tourism-related communications and associated goals for the coming year.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Community. Thank you for having me in front of you this evening. Following the presentation of the communications plan at a previous council meeting, I was requested to come and workshop this document. And quite frankly, I'm excited because there's a lot to it, and it's a very jam-packed 42 pages. So I'm joined this evening by our interim city manager and police chief, Tim Cromie, our city secretary, Sandra Ham, and Cheney Honeycutt, our wonderful human resources director. The three of them make up the other members of my communications team, and without them and their insight and their assistance in getting me up and going in this position, this plan wouldn't have come together. So thank you all very much for your help. So next slide, the background of why we have a plan. The development of the communications plan, which also includes a tourism business model, was one of the first goals upon my arrival with the City of Nassau Bay. In my mind, it's extremely important to have a communications plan, as it creates a single document with policies, procedures, goals, and associated budgets for your entire plan moving forward throughout the year. The idea is to update this plan annually with new goals and initiatives, as well as current budget figures, while keeping some of your core messaging, priorities, goals, and statistics in place. Next slide, we'll talk about the elements of the plan very briefly. It starts out with our mission, vision, and messaging priorities. When we talk about messaging priorities, we mean the types of information that we put out for the benefit of our internal and external audiences. Talking about messages related to safety, awareness, community engagement, employee highlights, and tourism. You'd be hard-pressed to come up with a message the city puts out that doesn't fall into one of those 5 categories. Then we go into our internal communications plan, which of course relies heavily on Cheney and her area. Emergency and crisis communications, which we see in incidents like Tropical Storm Nicholas, but even small things like traffic incidents. Our external communications related to both the Nassau Bay community and our tourism and marketing efforts. Our tourism business plan, which highlights our branding, our advertising, and our overall plan for the year. And then a couple of interesting annexes, including a Buxton Mobilytics report. This is third-party visitor data that creates a working profile of the people that come and visit our city. So it's very critical data in terms of ongoing advertising and generating additional visits to the city. And finally, a social media policy, which I did develop in partnership with the communications team. This manages both employee use of social media on their own time, as well as the management of city social media channels, and most importantly, our ability as a municipality to curate the content on our social media pages and what we can remove if necessary. Next slide. So hitting the high notes on some of the major portions, we're in the internal communications section. That's pages 5 to 7 of your plan. When we talk about internal audiences, of course, we're talking about this group, the mayor and council, as well as our staff, our directors, our leadership team, our supervisors. But depending on the incident, we can also be talking about boards and commissions. We can be talking about contractors we're working with, outside entities, etc. The ultimate goal for internal communications, and I love this, and Cheney did a great job developing this statement, especially thinking about communicating to employees. We strive to communicate accurate, reliable, timely, and pertinent information to the employees of the city on a platform or channel they have access to 100% of the time. If they need to know something, we want to make sure they can know it and know it quickly. So a lot of those channels include email, remind messages, flyers or printouts, our staff meetings, and in-person meetings if necessary. Next slide. Our internal communications goals for this fiscal year include establishing a method for looking at our existing communication efforts to make sure they work, creating new tools, including a quarterly print newsletter, and establishing a LinkedIn profile for the City of Nassau Bay. We do have a LinkedIn for the tourism side, which focuses on business, economic development features, etc. But a profile for the city is a great place for us to list open positions, talk about our current projects, etc. That's a good page for us to have. Next slide. We're moving on to emergency and crisis communications. This is covered in pages 8 to 12 of the plan. In the past, Dina Mahan, who was a wonderful person, I've worked with her in previous cities, identified major goals of crisis communications as meeting the informational needs of the city and developing and maintaining the tools we need to communicate emergency information as it comes up. Historically, these tools have included email, remind, and direct communication for our internal audiences, Swift 911 messages, social media, the website, and even print materials for external audiences, and relationships with our media partners, including I-45 now. moving forward, what I would like to do is, in addition to those channels, think in terms of a 4-level system to help us plan appropriate response levels for different types of incidents. So I've organized them in levels 1 through 4, level 1 being incidents that might impact our region but not necessarily us. Levels 2 and 3 either impacting adjacent neighborhoods or us to a very small degree, or level 4 incidents with a significant impact to Nassau Bay. When you think of level 4, think of Tropical Storm Nicholas. Level 1 might be a construction project or a traffic pattern that affects someone's commute to work from Nassau Bay. So in fiscal 21-22, we will strive to ensure our key staff members are trained on available communication platforms, actively research and seek out training opportunities, which, if done right, also build on our relationships with other entities, and closely track our performance during incidents, and hopefully create a performance matrix between level 1, 2, 3, and 4 incidents. So if a level 2 incident happens, we know about how many Facebook posts we would put out, would we use with 911, etc. Going ahead to external communications, as I said before, we divide external communications between when we're thinking about our Nassau Bay community and when we're thinking about tourism and marketing to ideally encourage more visitation to the area. So our external communication for Nassau Bay residents, pages 13 to 18, thinking about our social media outlets and how often we're posting. Of course, we strive to do that very consistently. Our monthly Compass Rose newsletter and the content we use in that publication, and our website to communicate important messaging to residents all throughout the year. The communication plan does track metrics and user data for each of those channels and will be updated annually. External communications for tourism marketing. This is where we have a partnership with Fun Love Media. Brittany Crossan is probably a name that y'all have heard of once. She's a very, very talented marketer, and she does a fantastic job with our Visit Nassau Bay channels, particularly working closely with Space Center Houston to use things like ticket giveaways to generate additional audiences for emails, and she just does a beautiful job and encourages quite a bit of business for the area through that. Moving on to our tourism business plan. This is pages 20 to 25 in your plan. The business plan breaks down our product, our audience metrics, our brand, our budget, and our marketing vehicles for the tourism program. My favorite part of the business plan is our audience insights, again, going back to that Buxton data. We have a 3-year agreement with Buxton, a $25,000 a year contract, and that gives us an unbelievable platform that lets us break down exactly who's coming to the city, their ages, their interests, the areas they're coming from. So this enables us to do very, very effective marketing in the future to the people that we already know are likely to visit our area. So this platform is invaluable, and I would ideally like to build on the way we use it, giving us not only data, but direct advertising to the individuals visiting our city. Is it a little weird that we're tracking their cell phone data? Yes. But it ultimately gives us an ability to communicate with people that are enjoying our community, and that's what we want. We want to make their visits as easy to enjoy as possible. So the plan does include a full mobile analytics report on pages 26 through 35, and that gives you an idea of the type of data we receive about our visitors.
Can I just get a clarification, and I don't mean to interrupt too much, just because I can tell my phone's gonna ring because you said we may be tracking cell phones. I'm sure that wasn't what you really meant. Could you kind of just describe that a little bit better? Or who's,
yes.
Just because I know there's some people that have expressed sensitivities.
So we do not have the names of people associated with their cell phones. When a cell phone is used in a city like Dallas and it comes to Nassau Bay, we can tell based on that person's cell phone that they came from that area. And Buxton also tracks user profiles.
This is Buxton tracking the information.
This is not the City of Nassau Bay.
The City of Nassau Bay
yes.
is not tracking it.
Correct. Well,
just to be clear.
The city receives access to, no, you're fine.
I know.
So it's metadata from the cell phone, not personal data.
Yes, to a degree, but Buxton also creates profiles based on that metadata. So we also know the general age bracket they're coming from. We know generally what their socioeconomic status is. We know generally what their other interests are. So without attaching a specific name to a person or following a person's cell phone around the city, et cetera, we still do get a very interesting profile of the type of people that are coming to the city, and that is third-party collected. Buxton does collect that, but we pay for the access to that data during the agreement.
Are they still using the credit card tracking too?
I'm sorry?
Are they still using the credit card tracking?
My gosh, I hope not.
Yeah, We used these folks back in the 90s to make a decision or not with going forward with what the redevelopment we did. And these folks, if you use a credit card, they know what kind of cars you drive, where you buy the gas, the oil. They take your spending history and they categorize you up to 49 different profiles. So it's very effective for us to know that we could do retail here. And the redevelopment was right to redevelop. And I can tell you, if you use a credit card, they didn't do that, but your credit card company still all the data. You know exactly what type of tissue paper you buy in the food store. It's absurd that it's all bought, traded. They give us the categories of personnel. We don't get any raw data. We didn't in the past. Boston's very well known for that.
And I do support that you buy this information just to make it clear, and I really like the data, so I didn't want that to be a digression.
No,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. It's a good question to ask, and I just think the platform is really fascinating. The kind of information it gives us, again, without revealing a specific person's name or any identifying information, it does give us a very good picture of who's likely to visit our city and enjoy a visit. Last but not least, in the plan, we've got our social media policy. Now, I don't mind admitting that I brought a lot of this from my previous city in Deer Park. I worked closely with the communications team to make sure that what we had in place for our social media policy fit our city's goals and needs. As stated before, the policy outlines the protocol and procedure for employee and volunteer use of social media and the management of our individual social media outlets. And it outlines the city's content management policies and includes our public-facing social media policy. So that's linked on, when you look at our About Us page on our social media profiles, it links to a social media page on the website that outlines everything for users that they can read through. Note, the policy has been reviewed and approved by our city attorney. Happy to take any questions.
Very good. One question. Are we putting the care on contacting you?
We certainly can.
I mean, here lines of a chemical gas explosion in a toxic cloud heading this way. You get notified. And we need to get that out to the citizens ASAP 911. You make sure that that's included in here.
We sure can. Any other questions?
Just a comment. I really appreciate the effort that you're doing. You're putting together quite a bit of data. You have good analytic just mind to be able to look at that data to the benefit of the city. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
You did an excellent job here.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. I know you've been working on this a while and it looks really good and you've done a great job, so kudos.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
You condensed it very well too.
42 pages on it.
Good job.
Update and presentation from the Infrastructure Committee.
Good evening, Mayor, Council residents. Just a quick update from the water and sewer project that we have going to start off. We had a really good pre-construction meeting Friday with the staff, engineer, and the Texas Water Development Board representative. And so contractors are going to be mobilizing in the city on February the 7th. And this is the $2.6 million project. As a reminder, it's 2.1 miles of water lines and 4.2 miles of sewer lines with manhole rehabilitation. And so the first phase is going to be videotaping of the sewer lines and also videotaping of the backyards. We want to make sure that they don't disturb anything or destroy anything. So they're going to videotape everyone's backyard that we're going to be working, or they're going to be working in the front yard. And then they're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks on the pipe being delivered. They've secured a contract with a local pipe company, and so it's going to be about 3 or 4 weeks. Once that pipe is brought into the city or their yard, then they're going to switch over to water line replacement. So due to the water breaks that we've had and everything, so they'll be mobilizing from sewer in about a month over to water. Also, we've submitted 2 additional sections of water lines that we think that need to be repaired quickly, and also it may be a substitution of another area, but we're reaching out to the Texas Water Development Board, so we'll know if, how that's going to happen. And then let me see here. We'll be working with I'll be working with Kristen a lot, and we'll be updating the city's website every quarterly on progress, pictures, the percentage of the completion of the project. So, and then also they will be passing out flyers 3 to 5 days prior to getting in people's backyards, and we'll also be sending out a SWIFT alert and then putting it out on social media just to make sure that everyone is fully aware that they'll be in their backyard, and if there's any issues, they'll be able to let us know. That includes door hangers, and then also the project is going to last exactly about 1 year. We're hoping it don't go longer than that. And so we're pretty excited about it, and we think it's going to go along pretty good. And so that's the update on the water and sewer.
Paul, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
At this point, at the beginning, what percentage of our infrastructure, water lines, sewer lines, have been replaced? And at the completion of the project, what will the percentage be? Because I know we're all concerned about our aging infrastructure.
So far, we replaced probably about 2,000 feet of water line, and we have 15 miles. And so
we have a long way to go.
Yes, we have a long way to go. So this is going to be 2.1 miles of 4.2 miles of water. Same thing on the sewer. It's a little bit longer. I think it's 16 miles of sewer, and this is going to be 2.1 miles. So we've got a long way to go.
We are beginning.
Yes, we are.
It's only just begun.
If I can add on Paul's, the meeting the other day, one of the things that the company was adamant about is a lot of this work is going to be boring under the ground to limit the disruption to the residents' homes and yards. So as much as possible, they're going to stay underground, so they won't be digging up. They won't actually be digging up yards unless they absolutely have to. So that, and that was a priority of theirs.
Yes, yes. So on the sewer line, basically, if you have a manhole in your backyard, they'll just go from one manhole to the other, pipe burst it, put you a brand new line, and then the only thing they'll be digging up would be the taps. And then on the water line, it's gonna be a direction board, which would just go right beside the other line, and the same thing, they'll be tapping into the meters, and then we'll switch over from the old system to the new system. So 95% of the work is going to be all underground.
Which is awesome. So I just want to make a quick comment to kind of broaden the history. So in 2017, I think this council did an excellent job of identifying our aging water infrastructure, put a plan in place, raise some water rates, did a bond issue last year. And so I want to thank you, Paul, and all the staff that have worked on this. Nassau Bay, even though it's 60 or 50 plus years old, is going to have in the next 10 years less than a decade old water system. So I think that's something we should be proud of, and I think our council's done a great job committing to those resources.
Yes, sir. And then also the website will include the master map that shows all of the water lines that we've done, all of those this year, and then we'll continue that every year, and then also with the sewer line. So, and that sewer line, I think, dates back to 2012. I think is what I remember seeing when we did start doing some sewer line replacement.
Paul, does the plan reflect how much is being done in each of the next years, the next 10 years, or however long it takes? Is there a consistent amount of funds and progress made each year, or is there a year where there's a lot more that needs to be done just because of where the location is, or
so what we do is every year we look at our master board, we look at all the water leaks that we've had, and we plot them on the map, and then we go through and we look at if it's a certain area, like, we've had a lot of breaks on Antigua. We plan on replacing that. We've had a lot of breaks on West Indies. We plan on replacing that. So every year we look with the Public Works guys and we make sure on the next go around that we have all the areas identified.
But every year, what's not fixed is getting older, and so you can deduce that you'll probably have more leaks per foot of unreplaced lines every year. And but the pipe that we're putting in is plastic and should have a life span far greater than the steel pipe that we're having to replace now.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Thank you.
If you need any help boring, let me know.
Yep. You're right.
Getting the mud off the street.
Sandra, would you please read item C?
Discussion on a 5-year Nassau Bay Parks Master Plan and rotational budgeting for future parks equipment.
Okay, who's going to speak? This is action.
I'll speak on this one. I added this on here, and I have had many discussions with council member prior about this as well, and I think it's an appropriate time to make sure that we're constantly reflecting on our decisions that we're making as a council and making sure that if there's a way to better our city moving forward, that we're taking responsible actions to do so. I believe that a parks master plan would be very beneficial for us at this point. It's my understanding we have not had one since 2003, if that's correct. And I just want to say that we've looked at some other cities. Most of them are larger than us, so they have a full-on parks department that goes out and inspects things. But one thing that stuck out was this effort to make sure that there is a rotational budget for playground equipment. So instances that we've had recently where we have no playground equipment at David Braun Park and the playground equipment at Swan Lagoon Park is closed down because it's hazardous. We want to prevent that in the future. I think we're a smart city, we're a smart council. I think that we got a great Parks Committee. That's something that we can fully make sure that that's not the situation again. The other goals for this would include, let's see, not being in that same situation with no equipment going, and then looking to replace our equipment on a rotational basis, given that every 10 to 5 years that warranty ends. That might be a good metric of when we want to replace it, or just making sure that we're monitoring it and already putting it in the budget preemptively to replace it on a rotational scale so that we can maintain fiscal responsibility when it comes to replacing this equipment, because it's not going to last forever. That's just the bottom line. And then with the master plan, we would have a new vision for our parks. You know, bringing in the professional plan allows us to have access to ideas about other cities that we may not know about, have access to the latest and greatest technology as it emerges when it comes to providing playground equipment we may not know about. I know in the past I've brought forth this giant soccer wall that was interactive, and you could have a map and the kids could play each other even when they weren't there, so to speak. That unfortunately wouldn't fit in any of our parks with the water situation, but we may, as we redevelop as a city in the future, find that something like that is what the younger kids want as they get a little bit older. And I know that that's important too, to make sure that we are appealing to all the age groups in the city with our parks. And then lastly, we can also include in this master parks plan, and I think this is very important given several topics tonight, how we can further reach out to our citizens. I think a lot of people want to have a say in Nassau Bay, and that's commendable, and we want to keep that way for certain. And one of the criticisms about the last round of surveys that went out regarding the parks and some of the decisions that we could make, some of the citizens said they didn't know about it at all, and that they didn't have access to it, or they were confused on this or that, and they just didn't feel like they had all the information. So we want to investigate a little more in how we can make sure that we're reaching out to all the citizens that want to have input, moving forward with the parks. So what I wanted to accomplish tonight with getting this on here, and I'll let Councilmember Pryor chime in as well if he has some comments on this, I believe. And what I would like to do is just get a general consensus from council that as we look to the FY23 budget in the coming months, that we look into putting forth some funds to contribute to a parks master plan so that we can really have a good vision moving forward and avoid some of these, I would say, valleys that we've been experiencing lately when it comes to park equipment, and making sure that we have the funds to put in for all ages as needed, and not having to close down a piece of equipment because it's hazardous or spend extra funds on it just to get it back up and running. And that would be my ask today, that we just have a general consensus on that. And Matt, I'll let you chime in here if you want.
Yeah, I think ultimately we've all seen the amount of community interest in our parks equipment and developing play spaces for community members and the citizens at large in and around Nassau Bay. And I think it's going to be important for us to continue to keep this top of mind, to make sure that we've got this on the budget on a recurring basis, to allow our parks department to have a 3, 4, 5 year kind of view on the kind of discretionary income that, or not income, but funds are going to be made available to them, so that they can start creating a little bit more of a master plan and be more intentional with the development of our parks. And that's really, I think, what we were trying to accomplish with tonight's topic.
One thing I would add to that, though, is we need to address the elevations down there, repetitive flooding. But we're doing a patchwork right now. We're going to raise this, we're going to raise that. We should raise the whole area. We have to defend our sewer plant from flooding. Harden the sewer buildings down there. It's not just the parks. So we started years ago. We upped an elevation 6 foot to protect the houses. But when that stream comes down here and jumps up to 10-foot elevation, we're in trouble. And we need to think long and hard about our investment. Because if we flood below, the ball fields, unless something's done, it'll be there still. They can be determined to be a wetlands by an inspection. They find their own plants growing in there. So it's something we really need to take seriously. Nobody wants to do it, but we got to do it.
I think a master plan is a good idea. We do everything in this city so well with comprehensive planning. We just heard the one from Kristen regarding communications. It is an issue about thinking ahead strategically, always to what you will be needing, and having the funds, the resources available to do it. I think it's a great idea.
I think it's time, because one of the things that always reveals itself as a gap is that when you have a change in, like here in the city, demographics. We probably have the largest influx of families with kids that we've seen since like 1995 from the data that I've seen. So from that standpoint, it's a great for the healthiness of the city, but when it comes to the needs, they're changing, and they're changing to where we just don't have enough of certain things because our priorities have been elsewhere. And I think that's where this kind of came to a head, is that there are changing priorities. There are things that need to be done, and a master plan would help it, smooth that out to make sure we have the right resources in the right place.
Almost everything in our budget is necessary or extremely highly desirable. And so, everybody wants the sewer plant to work, and everybody wants water in their house, and they want the roads to be in reasonable shape. And the park equipment is just one of these items, and it's an important item, but it's not the only important item. And if you start setting policy that we're going to spend this much on this all the time, and it's going to be a priority, there's other things that aren't going to happen. And a few years ago, we learned that because we're a part owner of the city of Houston's East Water treatment plant, and we have lots of advantages of that. But we suddenly owed $1 million plus for I don't remember exactly what it was, renovation or past repairs. And we had to cancel some things. We canceled, I don't remember whether it was water or sewer or both, but we canceled a substantial amount of that we had in the budget for the next year. And that's the type of things that happens to a city. So I want to have a good plan for the park, and I want people to look at what new is available and et cetera. And I want to maintain the stuff, but I want to maintain the sewer. I want to not flush the toilet. I want it to go down, not come up in the house, and that's important too. So we need to balance the needs, and if we're going to designate X dollars for the sewer every year, and X dollars for the water every year, and X dollars for the sewer every year, we don't really need a city council. You know, we just put all that in the computer and go home. And so I think we have to leave some flexibility for future councils to put the money where the greatest need is at that time.
But I think our council, especially in this year's budget, has done a great job in reprioritizing where funds are going. So our CIP budget is larger, and I welcome having us focus on improving our play spaces. So I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. And to your point, Bob, I agree. I mean, once something comes ahead, I mean, it would be that council's vote to authorize the funds, but I think you can plan. As they say, quotes are free, right? Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would reiterate that and just say that, you know, there's a lot that we do that is planned out in a thoughtful way that saves us money and helps the city grow in what we need and what the citizens want. And, you know, having a parks master plan, I think, would definitely play into that in our priorities as a city and helping our property value grow and increasing our quality of life, which I think is a decent thing to plan out, but of course we can always redistribute funds as needed.
I think this one's dead.
This one's dead. Moving on.
Discussion on future city council workshop dates and scheduling of those workshops.
Yeah, so I talked with Chief, and this is just a simple request. So in any organization, city or corporate or what have you, I think it makes sense to have some oversight. So when we approve the budget, we have the city manager's purview of those funds. So I'm not questioning any additional duty pay for subordinates of the city manager, the interim city manager.
I think you're a 90-day.
Right. Jump in ahead. Sorry.
No problem.
So when do you want to schedule the next council?
Yeah.
Let's do a month.
I'm the one that requested the workshops, but if you need more time to talk things out, I'll be on tonight. I did not know at the time there was going to be estimate concrete 6 months, one every month. My original recommendation was as needed, but put it on the 4th Monday of each month, so people know you may be called for a workshop. I'd like to get back to what the original intention was, and make them not mandatory, but as necessary. At that same time slot, potentially.
Yeah, I agree with that policy.
Just so I understand, we're talking about not putting the workshop permanently in that 4th Monday, but just making it as an ad-need meeting. I would agree with that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we sunset this? Are we at the sunset?
We're at the sunset, and so that's why it's back on the.
So let me just give a little bit of a background for the citizens, is that when we started this, we didn't know how it would work, the amount of time, the topic things. I actually believe with some of the past history, it's been very good to meet every 2 weeks. I guess what I'm wondering, are you asking to say, should we just do another 6 months and reassess it? Are you looking at a specific, what are you looking at?
I'm saying we should schedule,
optional,
but the time period would be the fourth Monday of each month, potentially a workshop. It may be called or it may be not called, but it's optional.
What's the criteria for calling it?
A workshop is a meeting to discuss projects, issues, and problems of the city you are taking up. In other words, by the time we get finished with talking about the TV stuff as you did tonight, it should go to council as a finished budget, finished project. Council should.
So this would be at the discretion of the mayor. I'm just wondering how we would actually say we come into it.
There are, any 3 council people can call a special session. So it's not just the mayor that has the ability to do that.
So are we going to, yeah.
Let me just chime in. I think that maybe your question is, would we still open it up to new business, or would we want to restructure these workshops to just be more of a council workshop, which is when we talk about the priorities on these focus areas, neighborhood of dreams, recharging corridors, safe and peaceful. Is that the distinction you're
I want it to be only workshop issues, new business.
Okay.
If you have new business and want a special meeting, call one before the workshop.
Okay.
Don't make it part of the workshop. The workshop is for the council to sit down and talk about issues, hear from committees, and work on projects. So when this group here at a workshop, it goes to council, it's not going to take up 3 hours discussing something that was debated 2 weeks ago. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I strongly support workshops being just for workshops and not handling, these have now become just a second council meeting in every sense of the word.
So you're proposing moving forward, we make these workshop opportunities simply workshops and only on an as-needed basis?
Yes, and if for some reason we don't have one next month, but we need a special meeting for something else,
We can call
we can go.
I
don't just want to be tied down and say you got to do it when it says, and I'm not going to talk about it.
Will we moving forward out of just from a policy point of view, will we know by the council meeting if we're going to have a workshop or not, or are we going to be able to put a deadline like?
Maybe to call it at the end of a council meeting whether or not we will have one, because I don't
just
know
for
if
planning purposes.
Yeah, just for planning purposes. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I support a good part of that, but I just don't want it to be ambiguous as to when a workshop is called or not.
I would say what we do for the regular council meeting, we meet on the Wednesday morning at 8 or 9 o'clock to discuss the agenda for the council meeting. And I think we should do the same thing the Wednesday before the workshop. The mayor pro tem, city secretary, city manager meet and review what's going on. If there's something to be called for a meeting, set a meeting and set the agenda. Of course, things do pop up at the last minute, I'll tell you around here. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like the idea of where at the end of a council meeting, we find as we go through something and we need a workshop, then we kick to a workshop, and that's what would trigger having a workshop. Where if you go through a city council meeting and you don't have anything to trigger a need of a workshop, you wouldn't just have a workshop that you'd have to cancel or whatever. Just set it at the end of each meeting.
I can see where things come up after the council meeting, like an infrastructure meeting about pumps and so forth, like the big road, that wasn't discussed with council. Council not aware of what's going on with the infrastructure meeting. And here we need some guidance. We need to educate people on what we're doing. I don't want to put so many restrictions on this thing where it becomes a Ouija board to have a workshop. we need to have a workshop, have it. I'd like to give at least a week's notice to it. But there will be exceptions. We want that to be a special meeting of council. I don't care. I need a mechanism. I think we need a mechanism to call a meeting at will, and we do have special meetings. This is just a workshop meeting. I'd make it as simple as we can. I'd like to go back to Wednesday before. You will know in council if you have something you need to take to workshop. But there's something we had come up. That's it, scheduled to workshop.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
At the end of the council, I mean, we go to a council and that's how it
But
goes.
it shouldn't get to council where someone says, we need a workshop. That should have been a workshop to deal with and ready to go to council. We had the tail wagging the dog here, so we can. Somebody make a motion, let's move on. There's no football game, when you think?
It's something we can take action on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think there's an action.
It's not action item.
It's a workshop.
All right.
Right. It's a special meeting now.
Couldn't resist.
Sandra, would you read the caption for item E?
Presentation and discussion on the city's policy for personnel additional duty pay increases.
Okay, so I'll kind of start in the middle from where I was. So this simple, and I talked to Chief about it. I think we're kind of in agreement. So all I'm asking for is that if there is, additional duty pay increases for the city managers specifically, that would just come to council. And it sounds like that's already in motion. So that's the long and short of it. Go ahead.
So after you and I talked after the last meeting, staff did review. There was a 2012 ordinance that gave powers that if we have additional employees that have additional duties because of, let's say, a supervisor is out for family leave, medical leave, or something of that nature, and somebody has to take over those duties, there's an additional temporary compensation for those employees. We could not find a policy, but we have written one, and I've signed off on it, that now puts that, memorializes that process. So we have a policy. We also have a policy now that dictates that any increase in the city manager's salary or pay must come through the council. And then while we were there, we also enacted car allowance. Thank you. A car allowance policy. There's been a practice of a car allowance, and it wasn't a policy, so we put that in place. So, and it's all been memorialized and signed off on, and it's in the employee handbook now.
Thank you for.
I think that we need to make it one change in your policy, and I'll ask that to be put on the agenda for the next council meeting, and that is that special pay for additional work or whatever for the city manager himself must be approved by the city council.
Well, I think the mayor that covers it says that any increases in the city managers will have to come through council. So I think that's covered.
That's what it says? Okay. That's what I want.
We'll review it, but that was the intent.
Yeah, I read that, and I didn't see that in here. Well, if it's not in there, let's put it on the agenda at the next meeting.
Yes, Mayor, it says all changes to the city manager's salary must be approved by official city council action. It should be communicated to Human Resources and Finance in a timely and official manner.
Item F, please, Sandra.
General discussion on the city's priorities and focus areas.
I also discussed that workshops should last no more than 1 hour.
Amen.
So we prioritize a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I think
Is
we've
it
done
all
it.
in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Motion, seconded.